In the last clip, I showed you how to create and dispatch custom events from a nested child component. What I did not show you was how to handle those events in the parent component. There are actually two ways to attach event handlers in the parent component. The first method is arguably the easiest way to attach an event handler. It is done by adding an inline event handler to whatever HTML element or component is being tracked. The second method involves adding an event listener, typically in the constructor for the affected component. Either way, you will need to add a handler function in the JavaScript. For the first method, this is what the markup would look like. And if you had a custom event named clicked, notice that the event name is prefixed with the word on. Also notice that the event handler is surrounded by curly brackets and not single or double quotes. This is what the second method of adding an event listener might look like. Typically, this will be done in the constructor for the component. In both those examples, the handler was named handle_button_clicked, and this is an example of what a handler might actually look like. In this simple example, the handler is just setting the value of a variable named event name. Before we get too far into the code, I want to make sure you are aware of this excellent resource where you can learn a lot more. If you are doing a lot of work with events, I strongly suggest you take some time to go through these docs and learn as much as possible about how they work. For example, if I were to scroll down through this documentation, you'll see that I'll get to a part here that advises not to use inline event handlers. Now, I just told you this is the simplest way to handle events, and that is true. It is also the method you will find referenced in most code samples you find on the web, including those you find in the Salesforce docs and repos. So they are not necessarily a bad thing. The important thing to take away from this is that web standards are constantly changing. The MDN web docs are a good resource that you can count on to have the latest and most accurate information, so you should always reference and consider them in your web development efforts. Having said all that, I will now switch back to VS Code and show you what needs to be done to make the nested code sample from the last clip actually work when I click that button. So here I am in the HTML for the parent component, and notice that the nested child component has no inline event handler. I can easily fix that by just clicking in here and then adding an onClicked attribute that references a function called handle_button_clicked. The only thing left to do now is switch to the JavaScript for this parent component and add that function handler. Now I just need to configure the parent component so that I can use it in a Lightning app page. To do that, I'll switch over here to the meta file for the parent component only, since the child will be exposed because it is nested in the parent. I will then change the isExposed attribute, which by default is set to false, to true, which means it'll be exposed to Lightning App Builder. I then need to paste in some additional attributes that will be used also by Lightning App Builder, and more specifically, the targets, which specifically says this can be used in a Lightning app page. And now all I have to do is save all my changes, and then use Command Palette to push the source to the default Scratch org, which has already been defined. Once that is done, I can go back to Command Palette and once again open that default org. Once the default org opens up, from Setup, I can go to Quick Find and type Lightning App Builder. Select that, and then from here click the New button to start the wizard. It'll first ask me what kind of page, and I just want this to be an app page since that's what I've exposed it to, and I'll create a label called LWC Events, click Next, and then I'll just use a one region page at this point since I'll really only have one component with a bunch of nested components inside of it. Once this appears, I'll then scroll down to where all the custom components are and then drag that LWC events onto the surface. And there I have it rendered right away. And at this point, the last thing I have to do is to just save my changes and then activate them. And from here, I'll just click the Lightning Experience tab and then select the Sales Lightning app and then add that page to that app. So it'll appear as a tab and then save those changes. Once they're saved, I can just click this back button to go back into my setup, and then from here use the app launcher to access that sales app. And here I can just use that new LWC Events tab that was added, and this pulls up that particular component that I've added to that Lightning app page. And to test it, I just need to click Fire Event from Simple Child, and boom! Now my event handler has worked, and you'll see that there is an event name being displayed here. But stay tuned for the next clip, where I will be covering how to pass data in your custom event.